Welcome back to the channel. This is Self Haircuts by Dane, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to do a drop fade on waves. All right, let's get into it. First thing I'm going to do is set my guideline. And how I think of it is I use about a ½ inch around the lowest part of my hairline as my reference. So I try not to go any higher than that. If I go any higher than that, when I'm setting the guideline, as I go further into the fade, it's going to cut too deep into the waves. And it's going to throw the whole look of it off. So I try to keep my guideline as low as possible, and I use a ½ inch around my lowest part of my hairline as my reference. This next step is optional, but depending on how long your hair is, you may want to knock a little bit of the bulk down. It'll also help with the fading as well. So currently I'm using a 1 guard, completely open, and I'm cutting the hair with the grain. For those of you who don't know what with the grain means, it means from the crown of your head to your hairline, rather than your hairline to the crown of your head. All right, now we're getting into the fade. So I set my clippers to completely open, no guard, and I'm using that first guideline as my reference. I just follow that line all the way around my head, and I go up another ½ inch. All right, next step, still no guard, but we're going to switch the clippers to closed. And then what we're going to do is use the corner of the clipper to try to get that first guideline out. All right, so you're just trying to remove some of the dark line that you made from that first guideline, so it starts to fade into the rest of your hair. Next, I'm going to use a 2 guard, completely closed. And I'm just following the flow of the fade so far. And from that bottom line, or the darkest line that you can see at the bottom, I'm going up about 1 inch. Right, so I'm just fading into the hair. With waves, it becomes a little difficult because waves create very dark lines in your hair, right? So depending on the angle that you're looking at it, you may feel like the line isn't fading at all, but you just got to stay consistent with it. So see it from different angles, make sure you have good lighting, and then use that 2 guard to go up 1 inch. Next, I'm going to work out that second guideline. So that dark line that you can see at the bottom. What I'm using is a 1 guard, completely closed. And I'm just scratching at that second guideline, right? Some ways I'm flicking it. Depending on how your head is shaped, you might want to be a little more aggressive with it. But I'm just trying to fade that second guideline so it continues to flow into the rest of the fade. Next, I'm using a 1.5 guard and continuing to work through some of those darker areas as I'm going higher into the fade. So wherever I think that needs it, I'll just continue to knock it out. In some areas, I probably was able to fade it well with just the 1 guard, but that 1.5 guard is a nice in-between guard between the 1 guard and the 2 guard. Then I'm going to use a 1/2 guard closed and continue to knock out some darker spots that I see. At this point in the haircut, it's just detail work. Don't make anything too sharp. If anything, keep in mind that you're going to use the corner of the clipper rather than the whole clipper, so you don't make any prominent lines in your haircut. And then I usually take that guard off and then keep the clipper with no guard completely open, and I'm just doing detail work. Just trying to find some of those darker areas and then knocking some of those darker areas out, which will allow the fade to be a lot more smooth. Now it's time to jump into the lineup or the edge up. Make sure you brush your hair or comb your hair down to that line so that when you make the edge up or the lineup, it creates as sharp of a line as possible. And just follow the natural flow of your hairline. This is going to be your discretion. I like the corners of my hairline to be a little higher, so I go up about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. I keep my vertical bars a lot longer. And then for my C cups, I try to keep them from 9 to 3, right? So it's as horizontal as possible until I get to that drop